Hello and welcome to another Sustainable Food Trust podcast. We are at Groundswell Festival in a bit of an odd situation, I suppose, compared to normal. We're not online, we're in person. There's a small audience here, but we're joined in person by three quite amazing guests. I feel a little out of my depth here because these guys are the top of their field, I suppose. Is that too generous? Would that be, or do you think that's about right? I think it's about right.
It's a bit generous, but anyway, yeah, carry on.
Yes. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, just to tell me a little bit about sort of what's brought you here today to Groundswell, to our podcast tent, I suppose, and what sort of got you into the realms of what we're going to talk about today. And what we are going to talk about today is nutrient density. It's about the unlikely alliance between sustainable farming and possibly things like Ozempic, and to see if there's actually a bright future ahead of us down these new alleyways, which I think would be fair to say we've not really thought about before in many ways. Farming has maybe ignored it, never realised all these things that exist, but the science is coming now. Tom, give us a little overview of your background and why you're here.
Sure, yeah. So my background is I am a medical doctor, graduated 2001, spent sort of 15, 16 years practicing medicine in the UK and abroad in secondary primary care settings and public health. Then I took over our family farm, converted that into regenerative agriculture, still juggled both medical doctor and farming. Then did a Nuffield farming scholarship looking at how farmers can make a positive impact in local community health. And now sort of pitching myself around that sort of space of public health, food with wider health benefits, and food farming systems and nutrition.
Great. It's very topical, very well linked to everything that's going on here at Groundswell. I think the conversations are always touching on health this year. What about yourself, Lucy? You've come into this from a slightly different angle. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, no, thank you. So my background is as a vet, actually, many years ago, working in livestock and as a small animal vet, and then finished work for about 10 years. And in that time, I just became fascinated, actually, as a mother about food. And I really wanted to just get food and understand it. So did a master's in nutrition about 12 years ago now, and really that was the point, because I did that at King's College. It was the point at which we were really rapidly starting to understand more about the gut microbiome, and I guess I just found that incredibly exciting, as almost like the missing link for me between wholesome food and the enormous benefit it can have on our health, and starting to understand this whole world that we've not known about previously inside us. And really, because of my sort of passion for nature and my background in farming, I became really fascinated by the link right back to the soil in which our food is grown, how that impacts the animals that are grazing in those sort of more regenerative systems, how that impacts the quality of the food that we're then eating, how that impacts our health. So I've kind of been on this journey, really, understanding the links between soil, healthy food, human health. And it's got a big, a big area to be, lots of exciting emerging research coming through. And I think my driving sort of force behind all of this is, for sure, wanting to do my bit for the climate, but really understanding now that, our health crises and our climate crises are inextricably linked, and regenerative farming or organic farming, agroecology, holds so many of the answers and so much potential to start to turn our health around and look after our planet at the same time. So that's sort of what underpins everything I do as a public health nutritionist.
Well, that link is becoming very evident. I think you probably know, my sister is also a dietitian, and so we're always having these conversations at home about the link between the microbiome of your stomach and the soil and all the rest of it. But to be honest, even if we knew that, there wasn't a lot we could do about that necessarily, because if you felt that you knew this, you couldn't go out there and just say, oh, I want this food because this one's better.
Yeah.
But actually, Dan Kittredge is here. You think you've sort of solved that in many ways. Do you think how close are you in looking at how many nutrients are in a carrot compared to another carrot side by side?
Should I introduce myself first, or just go straight into the answers?
Well, absolutely introduce yourself.
I don't
I
can
absolutely.
I'm happy to answer the question.
Yeah.
But yeah, in short, my name's Dan. I'm from the States. I come at it as a farmer, so these guys come from different trajectories. I come at it from a farmer perspective. My lens was trying to figure out how to make a living, and my struggle was my crops were succumbing to infestation and disease, and I just didn't have enough to pay the bills. And so, growing up in the organic orthodoxy of we're superior because we don't use chemicals, great no chemicals, but also maybe being eaten alive by a flesh-eating fungus is not a sign of health. It's not a sign of health in pigs. It's not a sign of health in humans. It's also not a sign of health in a potato. And so when I realized that just because I wasn't using chemicals didn't mean my crops were healthy, that led me down a path of research to understand how to optimize the health of my plants, which actually connected beautifully to improving soil, carbon and system function, decreasing cost of production, better flavor, better shelf life, and we think better human health. And so that was the hypothesis that actually, and foundationally, it was the experience as a farmer of increasing economic viability that gave me the downtime to begin to start talking about these things that I thought were connected and I didn't see being discussed in the permaculture community, in the biodynamic community, in the organic community. Formally, what is the nutritional caliber of our food? We presume I'm a local farmer, my food must be better. All over the shops here in England, it's British raised. Well, great that it was raised in Britain, but does that mean that actually it's more nutritious? I mean, I think I'm totally in favor of local food production and resiliency in your country as opposed to things being in long supply chains. But part of it also is the nutritional caliber. So, for me, the question is, the health-giving attribute of that food. And if one carrot tastes quite nice and one does not really, does that connect to its nutritional caliber and the soil health and the farm viability? And it sure looks like these things are actually deeply intrinsically interrelated. And framed as the climate crisis or the chronic disease crisis, now we can frame it as the opportunity to solve these things simultaneously. So,
let's stay on that idea of nutrient density and the difference between our different foods. What have you found so far of what is the best system that supports it? Is it the variety of food? So is it the variety of carrot? Is it the soil that it's grown in? Is it the speed at which it's grown? What are the things that you've seen from your research that really affect that?
So we did look at, across multiple continents, across many years, hundreds of farms, almost 10,000 crop samples, overlaying the management practices and the soils and the nutrient levels. We asked these questions. How dramatic is nutrient variation? Does it connect to genetics of the crop variety? Does it connect to soil type? Does it connect to certification label? Does it connect to point of purchase? Does it connect to scale? Does it connect to individual practice? And the answers to all those were no. Just because something was at the farmer's market, does that mean it's more nutritious? Just because something was from a local farmer, or was from this soil, or this genetic, or that genetic, or organic versus not organic, we found really no meaningful connection between any of those things. The only thing that we found that connected to the levels of nutrients in the food was the level of life in the soil. Actually, the function of the microbiome at the bottom of the food chain is what seems to be intrinsically interrelated with the health of the plant, which is the nutritional caliber of that crop, which is the flavor, which is the human health attribute. So depending on where you stand, it's quite exciting or threatening. But it does seem like in any soil, you can do a wonderful job or a horrible job. At any scale, you can do a wonderful job or a horrible job. So people should feel perhaps heartened that the potential is there for them. But the reality is, when we look at the bell curves, the peak of the curve is not in the middle. If this is the highest level of zinc or polyphenols, this is the lowest level, a random distribution, you'd think that the peak is in the middle. And what we found was the peaks were over to the left. So the vast majority of the sample sat below the 50th percentile of what was possible. Most food was relatively quite low in relationship to what it could be, whether it was local or organic or from this genetic or this soil type or this point of purchase or that point of purchase. The supply chain right now does not have a high level of nutrients in it. So one way to look at that is there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. Like it's not hard to do better. The bar is quite low.
Sad, I suppose, but opportunity is waiting for us.
It's not hard to do a lot better.
And there's plausibility behind that as well, obviously, from a science point of view. That it makes sense that if you've got a biologically active soil with the microbes working hard for you, they're exchanging those micronutrients with the plant. They're helping that plant stay healthy, and that plant is looking after itself, so producing its own phytochemicals, producing its own vitamins, and having a decent amounts of micronutrients. So from a science point of view, I suppose we're all a bit obsessed by science in the medical world, but just having the plausibility, you've seen a relationship there, but actually makes sense.
It makes
as well.
a lot of logical sense that this would be the case.
Yeah.
It definitely does. Having been around the world looking at different companies where they're looking at the effects of biology in the soils and the types of the nutrients that a lot of the fungi might go out and grab, it's quite clear they're going to be bringing on more because you've got that contact with so much more soil. But what is the effect, Lucy, going on? Why do we need this? What's the effect on humans as human health of this difference in density of nutrients? And I guess a lot of the tiny things which we can barely measure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to bring into that because I guess one of the areas that we see quite repeatable in the science around soil biology and nutrient density is the level of polyphenols that Dan has mentioned. And yet currently polyphenols don't need to be on a food label, for example, and yet they have incredible benefits for our health, sort of long-term health protection, and really driving our gut microbiome. They provide really essential fuel for the microbes in our gut and for our and wider health benefits. So, that there is just one example of nutrient density that we are beginning to see improves within a lot of the research has been within organic systems, and yet it's not even on a food label, so how are people even meant to know about that? And then there's the concern that over the last few decades we've just lost so many nutrients from our food, and I know GPs are starting to sort of relate that to magnesium deficiency, zinc deficiency. It's coming through in health outcomes. So, even if we could get food back to having the nutrient density that it should have, I mean, in some cases it's massive, the loss of nutrients, vitamins and minerals from food. So, so there's that aspect to it as well. But then I think it's really important to remember that, food should be this kind of multisensory journey, really, and food is a really complex natural substance to drive our health, and it's a matrix of all sorts of different nutrients all working together. And if we could increase the diversity in our diet, then we get more nutrients in that way as well. And we've lost so much diversity from our diet. So there's so many angles at which that you can look at nutrient density. But ultimately, it's all about driving our biology. I mean, we have this amazing biological system that really wants to work well for us if only we could feed it the right fuel. So nutrient density is something that our natural biology recognizes. So, for example, our appetite system, if we just take that one very complex system, it's kind of like an orchestra. There's so many different parts of it that need to come together to work well for us. And a lot of that is around flavour and taste that Dan mentioned, and that comes from the nutrients in our food. And we have like 10,000 taste buds right through our digestive system that recognise those flavours from the nutrients in our food. Our gut microbiome is involved with that, and all that sort of cascade of chemical messaging that happens as a result of tasting those flavours helps us to understand how to choose food, how to know when we're full, and of course that then leads on to potentially overeating and health issues from that. So There's so much wrapped up in this as far as our health goes, with nutrient density. And I guess our main battle at the moment in public health is that the food that is most accessible is rich in calories, rich in energy, but very lacking in actual nutrition and real goodness. And that's just driving the wrong systems in our body. It's driving inflammation. It's causing all sorts of issues. So,
and just to put that in context, this is all quite new, right? I mean, yeah, for sure, we've definitely we have lost, but can perfectly well regain the ability as humans to be better at understanding what's good for us just through taste. But actually, in the medical world, when I graduated 2001. We didn't talk about the gut microbiome. That wasn't a thing. We didn't really talk about the gut as an organ. That wasn't really a thing. I rang Lucy up. I sent you a message about a year ago saying, Lucy, I want to get a bit better at nutrition. Can you recommend me a book? She sort of said, not really. And the
wait
one,
for mine.
wait for yours.
You wrote it.
We now have. Yeah.
I did.
Well, talk on that a bit, okay?
I know.
Yeah, come on.
But you did recommend me a book, and it was like huge, thick, 3 inches thick, and there was 1 page, maybe 1 page on phytochemicals, and that was a new edition. So it's just to give you a little bit of a picture of that. And the other really exciting thing about the now is not only do we know, we know about these things, we understand there's a value to paying more attention to them. Potentially the cost of measuring nutrition is coming down. The cost of the understanding of soil biology and the measurement of that is going to be coming down. So it's an absolute sort of zeitgeist moment that we need to sort of embrace if we're going to really benefit from regenerative farming systems and that focus around soil health and also sort of gut microbiome and nutrition and health.
So how do you get that public uptake, though? Because that's the next step, isn't it, really? If we know we can measure it, we know that we can do a crop which is going to really increase our nutrient density, we can get it into the shops. We know that it's going to help people's health in so many different ways. But how do we go this next step now and get people to buy it, to pay a premium, to pay rather per nutrient rather than per kilo for their food? Do you think that's something we need to do, or do you think we just have to bake it into the food system? And because you've looked at how you engage with the community.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I say we're at the moment where we can embrace all this and get better with the data, get more confident with it, get more measurements in to understand, the picture of how we grow this stuff and how we develop or how we grow food with better nutrition. I think we've got to be careful, to pace that just right. You certainly, I'm an evidence-based medicine trained doctor, but I also understand, the stagnation that can happen when the evidence doesn't exist. It's a two-way process here. You can't just sit there and say, well, we're not doing that. I can't do that. There's no evidence around it. You've got to recognise that there's a point, which is now, where we need to sort of nail this and get that confidence, because the confidence has to come through to the point where you can, just from a simple labelling of food point of view, because we can't. The labels we currently have on the food package in this country is basically a homogenised, averaged about 3,000 samples, and that's it, right? So it doesn't deliver on that bell curve that Dan was talking about. We're not quite there yet to be able to just batch test, food, and so people can read the label of the nutrition that's sitting in that exact product quite there. But we're not far off it. So we need to prepare for that. And from a growing point of view, we need to prepare for it, because if soil health is the thing that delivers that, you don't build soil health just in one season, right? You need to sort of establish that, and it's great, and nature's sort of telling us this, it's not that things are at loggerheads with each other. Ultimately, it's awesome that, delivering these regenerating farming systems deliver on climate health, nature health, and they deliver on nutritional health as well. So, it should be a no-brainer, but, it's not.
Yeah, it should be. And I think it's interesting that you say we can get this onto the shelves, because I think that's the huge barrier with all of this, that farmers there's so many barriers to them getting this food on the supermarket shelves. And I think there's a long way to go until we get there. And our food system has to change to actually put the value where the value should be and put farmers central, and recognise those hidden values that Tom was talking about. And then there's definitely the aspect that I think we need to help, just foster awareness with people in general, that we used to pay so much more for our food post-war. I think we spent about 40% on our salary on food, and now it's like below 10%. And because we've just lost that connection with food and the story behind it and everything that goes into producing it, and we just don't value it like we used to, and we've sort of lost that. We've lost a little bit of our culture, and I'm sounding a little bit negative here, but the plus side is that I think people like the Food Farming and Countryside Commission have been doing excellent work in creating these citizen councils in all sorts of different regions who are actually sort of collecting citizen science and hearing the voices of people, and people do want to be able to access this food. So we're kind of left with, we know that it's going to do us good, we know it's going to do farming good, we know that it's going to tick so many boxes. So how is the food system going to change in order that we can actually make that food accessible?
But imagine, once we get to the confident point where we can either measure or model ways of growing food that deliver on nutrition, you get to that point, say, thinking about sort of equitable access to food, but like public food procurement, writing those in a way that says, no, you have to deliver on these recognised highly nutritional food products and stuff. I mean, that's you. But you need to give those food procurers the confidence to be able to. You don't write a public food procurement policy that can't deliver something. That's not going to work, right? You need to build that confidence first somehow. Yeah.
I do think there's an element of maybe mistrust in a lot of this, because it feels hokey pokey science. We're only so close to it being something where organic farming, biodynamic farming, really. It was all sandals and singing. But really now all that science is coming around and it's backing it up. But there's so much mistrust in the public as well around so many different things. It's complicated. Do they want to learn any more? And do they want to trust in the retailers that they're going to label things correctly? Can we give them the confidence to go out themselves and test their own food? And then I think true value comes in that learning effect. What do you think, Dan? You're developing a product at the moment where you think that very soon consumers might be able to test their own food directly, maybe on your phone or something like that.
So I'm, in about an hour, going to be, I think for the first time ever, publicly sharing an app that we have built, which uses a piece of kit which is about 195 years old. It costs $6, which is, what's that, £4? Called a refractometer.
Yes, I have one.
Yes, they're brilliant, amazing instruments. I was just in East London over the weekend and went to 3 shops within a 200-yard radius, or maybe it was we'll call it a half a kilometer radius, and bought 10 or 15 crops off the shelf from each one. Came back, took the refractometer and the garlic press, and within 30 seconds had a reading on each one, uploaded it into the app, and now I'll be showing the map at the end of the next hour, where anybody can access. It's a free, open to the public app where if people take home their shopping and use the refractometer while you're chopping up your potatoes or your onions or your tomatoes or whatever it is for whatever you're cooking, quickly squish it, get a reading, upload onto the app, date of purchase, point of purchase, brand if there was one, and reading. Right now, we, the people, can, with citizen science, begin to identify patterns that exist in the supply chain, because food is not uniform. And BRICS is not a perfect nutrient density definition. It does somehow really closely connect with flavor and shelf life. And I would argue that, nature evolved us with very sophisticated nutrient monitoring systems called noses and tongues. And if our Western rational science disagrees with our noses and tongues, perhaps our science is not fully evolved. That nature actually has evolved some really sophisticated capacities for us to perceive, and we can't let that inner perception get, forgotten in all of our excitement about the Western rational scientific method, which I think is a very powerful method. But yes, in the immediate time, we can, in our hands, with something very inexpensive, collectively begin to find patterns. And I won't, share with you now the news of which store it was that was better than the others. But what we found in the U.S. is something similar. That those stores which, you don't associate with optimal nutritional caliber show up remarkably well in relationships to the ones that propose to be superior. So there is something that we can do now, which is hands-on, which is visceral, which you can overlay with your tongue, that can be citizen science, and we can raise awareness about this conversation. I think the point you were driving at was the spectrometer and the meter, and I've got a phone here, and it looks like scientifically it's plausible, doable that one of the cameras in your phone can, with a flash of light, read the relative nutrient levels in a very formal scientific fashion and spit out on the front, the part that you read, the answer. This carrot is in the 24th percentile of what a carrot could be, or the 85th percentile. That is a science project which our NGO is working on with many others around the world. We are not trying to build meters. We do not want to be putting cameras in phones. We're an NGO trying to do the science, and we're hoping that people who have a desire to sell things will take that data and try to sell instruments that work from it. But yes, the idea is that we, the people, can have scientific instruments in our hands that can measure the relative variation in food, and we can take our money, which is our power, our vote, our influence on the supply chain, and put a finger on this lever as opposed to that lever. As a farmer myself, I would say I became so much more profitable not by increasing my prices. I became so much more profitable by decreasing my cost of production. And I maintained my sales price with the competition. I just had better quality. Because my cost of production went down, I did not need to charge a premium to be more economically viable. So I do not necessarily subscribe to this concept that higher quality food has to be more expensive. My understanding is that the microbes evolved the plants. And when we create a dynamic where the microbes are flourishing, by definition, the plants flourish. And that is experienced by the farmer as lower cost of production, better yield. So I see the opportunities, the overlap here being really beautifully empowering for almost everyone, except for those selling toxins.
Well, this is it. And, we just talked about the
humans
price.
are plants.
Yeah, but you talked about the price of food not having to go up. You only have to go around this show here at Groundswell Festival, and pretty much everyone says, at the end of the day, I'm doing this because it's profitable. People start their journey maybe, and they might take a hit. A lot of people take a hit when they're getting stuff wrong, and they're starting out building soil biology in the first place. And so, actually, maybe we don't have to put up the price of food for this to happen. But the transformation, I don't think this can be underestimated, actually, here. This is a little conversation we're having here. We're very nonchalant about it, but actually, it has the potential to change the world of global agriculture. It has the potential to change public health across medicine, and the cost to the NHS or insurance companies back over in the US. What's your big blue sky change? What do you think it's going to look like, Lucy? What's your dream for all of this?
Well, the dream would be that the food is accessible to everybody, because that's the issue. The people who need it the most are the food is least accessible to them. And so, the dream that it's accessible, that actually children leave school knowing all about it. They know about farming, they know about the biology of soil, they know that soil kind of underpins everything and the connections right through to our health. And so, this is kind of, it's so, multifactorial, to use that word. There's just, we've got to bring everyone together on this. It's really complex, but and getting back to your point on trust, I think that's really, really important. At the moment we have just a few visual things on labels that people trust. You probably choose the organic and you say, well, people trust that because they sort of understand what it means. But we need to really develop that trust. And I think what you're doing, Dan, is brilliant, that you're then bringing citizens on board with this science, because what better way to build trust than to get them on board actually, looking at it themselves. And yeah, I think that trust is a huge part of it. And I actually think that the stories of the farmers just doing the right thing and producing food by restoring soil, they're fantastic stories. And people love a good story, and what better way to inspire people to get on board with this than to just get really good at sharing those stories.
Yeah, it's true.
I was just going to add, I'll be shot if I don't mention it, but we've been worked for a bunch of Nuffield scholars who were sort of working in this space, set up an organisation called VitaAgri. And effectively, I suppose that was looking at the idea that, well, let's start with where we're at, because I think a lot of the conversations we were having during a Nuffield scholarship was a bit about, well, there's some evidence out there, it's a little bit conflicting, I'm a bit confused as about where we stand with, what delivers nutrition, what farming systems, what variation there is, all of that sort of stuff. And so we sort of said, well, let's just start with a basic white paper that sort of pulls together all the evidence, critically appraises it. We've created an AI tool that helps you navigate through that. So you can just go vitaagri.org. You can plug in who you are. Oh, I'm a farmer, I'm a consumer, I'm a food processor, whatever it is, and it will sort of help you, prompt you, ask questions. But you can just take a tour of all of that evidence, which is quite nice. It also sucks in new evidence every half an hour and critically appraises it. So it's a permanent sort of growing body of evidence. So that's all part one. Part two is the idea that it also creates helps us understand where the gaps in evidence are, or where we could do better at concentrating our efforts on pulling this data. So I'm just building on this idea about trust, because your stories are fantastic, and you don't necessarily need to bombard people with lots of data, but somewhere hiding behind it all, you have got to be confident about that. And certainly, if you want to bring along, the wider food industry and stop them running a system at a race to the bottom, and actually bring in nutrition as a way of us, racing to the top in the world of regenerating farming systems, then you need to build that trust. And that trust for them is about data, understanding the evidence, being able to talk about this, and actually what we're hoping to try and achieve is an ability, which is difficult, to take the food industry from the grower through to the consumer on the learning journey. Because currently we know a certain amount, and that's really what the white paper and what the current VitaAgri offering is about. But very soon, with Dan's citizen power, citizen science, with all this sort of ongoing work, now that we really understand that this is something we need to concentrate on, we're going to get more and more confident about this, and we need to share that and take people on that journey through that. Get people behind it as well. So yeah, that's sort of where we're working at the moment.
It's being very transparent with the evidence as it comes through.
Yeah, because there will always be conflicting evidence, right? And you have to then, you come from a medical world where we are trained to critically appraise research. It's not done so well maybe in farming. I think my personal experience when I moved from one to the other. But research can be absolutely rubbish, right? Or it can be very good. It can be beautifully designed, and it can be terribly designed. And so we just have to be careful about looking at the research, concentrating on the ones that are actually valuable and well designed, trying to replicate that, bring in sort of more data and more competence and more trust around that.
It's fantastic. But I did mention at the beginning that we would talk about this slightly odd topic, which is this sort of rise of things like Ozempic. So I was actually, the reason I wanted to talk about it really is I was in Brazil and I was at Carnival, and I met someone who worked for Ozempic very high up, just randomly. We started chatting, and she said to me, "You have no idea. There is going to be a wave you've never seen before. There will basically be no obese people left in the world with this, because it's so cheap. It's cheaper than in many ways, in many places, than buying more food. So if that kind of happens, do you see this opportunity for sustainable farming, which kind of goes with this regen idea, because you'll need nutrient density at that point? We've got Marks & Spencer's just released a range of food about nutrient-dense food, essentially links to if you want to be taking Ozempic. So What do you think, Lucy? Is this, am I barking up the wrong?
No, so I think, I mean, getting back to the sort of dream that you mentioned, I think, the other part to that is that the worry is if we're only looking at restricting what we eat rather than looking at the quality and the variety of what we should be eating, then, that is potentially going to cause all sorts of issues. So this whole argument about restricting what we eat, and if the food doesn't get any better in quality, then that's going to be a real issue. So there is certainly an opportunity there for communicating on. It's never been more important to make sure that our food carries the nutrition that it should do, but also that it's put together when it leaves the farm gate in a way that maintains that nutrient density and stays in a form that our body recognises so that it actually works well with our biology. So there's definitely a real opportunity in this. But yeah, I would say that's the concern from a sort of health point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I would just caveat that with I find it all quite depressing. The fact that we've got this terrible food system that's delivered this awful state of public chronic disease, followed by a solution that we all just take a drug for the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah.
That is a bit sad, but you're right. Can't wallow too much in that. And I suppose from a caveat, I don't currently have a license to practice medicine because I haven't seen a patient for 12 months. So what I say now isn't clinical advice. Go and see your doctor about it. But ultimately, if you're on a weight loss jab, it should be delivered with a nutritional support, and it should also be delivered with sort of weight resistance exercise as well, right? It's not really at the moment because 95% of people in the UK who are taking weight loss jabs are doing it privately. The new Mounjaro, which has a primary care opportunity to, GPs are allowed to prescribe that. That will take 12 years to roll out on the finances, but 2.8 million people in this country are eligible for it. What I would say about drugs generally is there's always a lot of buzz around new drugs because the people making the buzz are the people trying to sell them. You will always get this peak, then you will find this sort of levelling off piece. So I do sort of slightly wonder whether it's going to be not quite as dramatic as they say it is. The adherence is about 10%, so people do not stay on it for that long. But the side effects are things like nausea, and you can solve some of that by having smaller meals. You can't eat as much volume as you would be used to, and therefore you're absolutely right. Micronutritional deficiencies is suddenly going to become an issue. I mean, it's already an issue, even on the food when we eat lots of crap food, right? But it's even more of an issue if you eat less of it. There's going to be a protein issue. There's going to be a fiber issue. You have to be very hydrated when you're taking this as well. So, people are going to be interested in protein for sure on these sort of GLP-1s. But so yeah, for sure. There's definitely just from the straight up food systems and corporates who want to sell lots of food. It's very hard to make them change. The status quo makes them lots of money. They're interested in nutrition and density, and the GLP-1s is one of the main things that's driving that. The beauty is that nutrition, as we said earlier, can deliver on soil health, planet health. So sometimes you just got to sort of fight your battles and then pick an opportunity and run with it. So I think it's definitely, as Lucy said, it's an opportunity we shouldn't sort of pass by.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the part to it, totally agree with all of that, Tom, and there is the sort of irony, if you like, that actually our gut microbiome is pivotal in producing our natural GLP-1 as well, and you just end up going full circle with this. I mean, it's actually lunacy, really, when you start to think of it like that, because they produce thousands of beneficial chemicals for us, and one of those chemicals then stimulates our own gut cells to produce our appetite suppressing hormone GLP-1. And then there's some interesting research coming through showing that in some cases when we are producing more of our natural GLP-1, we actually tend to have higher levels of a certain type of bacteria in our gut that produces a natural anti-inflammatory, and inflammation is at the root of chronic disease. So it's just, I think, yes, the nutrient density is so vital, but the most important thing in all of this is to help foster this awareness that just help people to understand how to make food choices that work with them rather than against them. And then, we can do so much with food rather than with weight loss drugs. There is absolutely a small percentage of the population for whom they are life-changing.
And also
and taking people out of diabetes and heart disease risk. And
for sure. And where we're at the moment with the number of people who are overweight and obese, most of whom would love to not be overweight and obese and have tried very hard not to be overweight and obese. It's absolutely, this point in time, they have a place. What we have to be very, very careful is we don't just sort of take the lazy route and say, oh, well, we've got a solution now. We do need, and the fact that this whole thing around nutrition and getting people more interested in their food and the taste of their food and all of that, we have to be really, really strong on building, making sure our next generations build a healthy relationship with food, and we prioritise that much more, because then we won't have all this overweight and obesity issues. Obviously, at the same time, dealing with the obesogenic society we all live in, right? But just not a small few problems there. But the fact of the matter is, you have to take these sort of moments, and this nutrition moment we've been talking about is a moment, right? We have to embrace that.
There is so much more. Yeah, sorry, Dan, you carry on.
No, I have to go.
Oh, well, I'm literally going to wrap up now.
Please.
Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to get you also to just say, we've barely touched the surface of this whole topic. Where can people find you guys to find out more about what you're up to? Dan, start away on that, please. Where can people follow you, find your research and everything you're up to?
Bionutrient.org is the sort of the parent NGO. Bionutrientinstitute.org is where we have the science. We've got a YouTube channel and various other social channels.
Lucy, you've written a book.
Yes.
Which is actually Tom's book. It has to get signed.
I'm waiting to get
Tom
it signed.
isn't the only one that owns it, though.
No.
Just give us a little overview of what's in your book, and also, where will people be able to get it?
Yeah, so it's general release from the 31st of July, but especially available today for anybody at Groundswell, called Soil to Gut, How to Regenerate Your Health with Food. And it's basically all about trying to reconnect, thank you, so showing everybody how to reconnect us with our food and how it can just work with us to help our biology to thrive, but importantly, really celebrating farmers at the centre of that.
Fantastic. And
Very
Tom?
good. Yes, vitaagri.org. It is spelled VITAGRI, vitaagri.org, and that's got just a great way of sort of exploring the evidence in a sort of friendly, easy way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. And thank you for watching or listening, however you're getting your podcasts. Please do go on to the Sustainable Food Trust's website and find many, many more podcasts. Follow all of the rest of our goings-on our social media. And, enjoy your day, everyone. I've got to get out. I think there's some drinks going on somewhere on another part. I think I'm going to come and see you, Dan. It sounds like you're going to go do something exciting now. Right, we've got to let him go.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.